Welcome to Beyond the Borders podcast,
where every story is a journey and every journey is an inspiration.
Beyond the Borders is all about highlighting the incredible cross-cultural stories that exist in our communities.
We want to provide a platform for their story to shine because they are so important in today's world.
These stories not only celebrate the diversity of human experience,
but also foster empathy, understanding, and connection.
Our mission here is to amplify these voices, so stick around and join us as we explore these stories throughout the season. Hey everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Borders podcast. My name is Natalie. I'm so excited to be joining you today. We have JJ with us in studio. We're very excited to be talking to her, and I'll pass it over to the others.
Hey, my name is Ian. I'm a friend of JJ, and I'm going to be burning her today.
Yeah, nice to be here as well, and loosely friend loose. So my name is JJ. I've been here in Colorado since we relocated from originally from Rwanda, but been here since 2003. Prior to that, we moved around a little bit in Africa before we moved here. So originally born in Rwanda, moved to Congo, Kenya, Zambia, and then here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so a lot of life by the time I was 11.
Quite the journey. Yeah. And we did a previous interview earlier where we were talking to somebody about, being a third culture kid, and she's been in a lot of different places and experienced a lot of different cultures. And it sounds like you had quite the experience with that as well. I just wanted to hear kind of a little bit about what that was like for you, especially I think at a young age, it's easy to not remember everything, but also to remember a lot of things.
Right.
And I think that there's that saying that like kids are resilient, but those experiences ultimately do shape who we fundamentally become at some point. So would love to hear a little bit more about that experience for you in your life.
Yeah. I mean, it was very interesting, but to me, it was the norm until you start meeting people and they're like, I've lived in the same place since forever. And I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, when we lived in Congo, we were very young. So not really much of anything other than like little snippets, because that's when I start having like memories of places we lived. And then when we moved to Kenya, that's when we started being around more like different cultures. One of my first languages to learn was Kikuyu, which is a local language there.
Yeah.
I can speak a lick of it now. So that was always interesting. And I always say the biggest thing is everywhere we went, there was always a new language, and we were always only ever there for a couple of years. So, but it was interesting for me because I'd be like, all right, I'm an introvert in a certain way, but very extroverted when it comes to like making sure I feel comfortable. So I would just be like, bye everyone, I'm going to go learn a new language. So it was fun. It was interesting. It was fun.
Yeah.
And then we moved here, and then I was like, wait, we're still here.
And was Colorado like the first place that y'all moved in the U.S.?
Yeah. Colorado and Denver, we've always lived like within, I would say, a 10-mile radius.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So used to the same place, went to the local middle school, local high school. Shout out to South High School and their middle school. And then I went to college up in UNC.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I think in some other conversations we've talked about kind of what that's like coming from a place too where like everybody's Black.
Right.
And you come to a place where now there are other kinds of people that make you aware that you are also Black.
Yeah.
That like, whereas like in other situations you might not have known that previously. And so you were young, obviously, but did you have any of those experiences of being like, okay, this is like a new concept of now there are people who look different from me and are letting me know that I am different versus like I might not have felt different in other spaces because being in Africa, even though you're in a different country, there's still this overarching theme of like we all are the same skin color at least.
Yeah. As far as skin color, it really didn't come until, which is kind of crazy to say, until high school when it really started like hitting you in the face, and then college going up to where I went. Then it's like a different type of flow. It's a different type of like life for the people that live there. So they're a little bit more vocal about the fact that you look a certain way. But just growing up, like living in different places, you would always hear the little things like, well, you're not from here. You're not from here. So I already had kind of that like embedded in the back of my head. But I would say like, and then we moved here. We were sponsored by a church.
Okay.
Majority white.
Yeah.
So, and they sort of just treated us like everyone else. So I was like, that's normal. And then I go to school and I'm like, oh, okay. And then I think middle school is like the first time I think I bumped in this girl where everyone like knew she was like not into people that look a certain way. Bumped into her, and she like aggressively like was rubbing her hand, and it didn't click to me until later, and I was like, that little.
Oh, you mean you actually physically bumped into her and she was talking about, girl.
Yeah, and so that doesn't click until like later in life, where I'm like,
click for me right now.
Yeah. And then when I learned about that she used to do that to everyone, I was like, I don't know, that's psychotic.
You could rub your skin raw. You know, like,
I mean, I don't know where she is, but I'm pretty sure
I hope she's bumping into people wherever she's at.
That's a quite an experience.
I know.
Yeah, I remember, like for me, I remember when I went. I just came from Rwanda, went to school in South Korea, and like this first person, like it was not a first, but like it was a predominantly African class where we have like people from Zimbabwe, Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, and like the first week I went to work, you know, like we call them tech pay. That's what we used to call them in South Korea. It's like these small jobs like a night, and then do 2-3 hours for more money. And there's this guy, he just came, he was like, he touched my head. He wanted to feel like, how does it feel? It was his first time to see a black person that close. And that is quite an experience to me. I still remember like it happened yesterday.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it is kind of like traumatizing at a certain point. But it is also like, how can somebody be this, like don't know how, like there is other people who live on the planet.
Yeah, that look differently.
Look differently. But let's say for you when you moved like into the African sky, you went to Kenya, the black, you went to Zambia, they were all black, Congolese all black, and you got hit, and it's like that incident happened. Like how, like afterwards, like how did you behave afterwards? How after seeing that people can feel that type of way or they can react like that when you bump into them, like. How did you start to behave in the society, in the community? Like what changed? Like how that situation changed
how
your behavior?
Yeah. I would say, like I said, it took me a while to like understand. But it was middle school too, so everything is like it's like overwhelming. So I would say I started processing things like where I'm just like we would go to dinner. And I'm sitting there with my friends, and like you have someone across from you. So my friends are sitting across from me, and I'm the only one on this side. And I have like this lady staring at me, and I'm like, what am I gonna do?
what to do?
Yeah, and so I'm looking at my white friends like, hey, can you look? I don't know what to do. Yeah. Yeah. But the good thing is I've always had like super vocal friends, and so they're just like ready to buck, and I'm all, well, I really honestly would much rather enjoy the rest of our night.
Yeah.
So I've been very chill in that way, but the older I get, the more I'm like, and then I make people uncomfortable, and then now it's like, we can engage if you want to, let's do it, but I'd much rather you like live your, stupid life by yourself and like keep me out of it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think it comes down to also taking up space, and like in line with y'all's stories. When I was in high school, I studied abroad in Europe, and one of the girls was like, "Can you get a hickey on your black skin?" Girl.
Okay.
She was like, "Your skin, like," I'm like, "The skin ain't even black. It's brown, but okay." Yeah, and she was like, "Can you get a hickey on your black skin?" And then stupid me, I must have been like, 15, 16. And she's like, "Can I try?" And I was like, "I guess." And I like gave her my arm, and she's like, "Want to try?" And I was like, "This is so weird." Like, it was just so stupid and so weird.
You're like, is this bonding?
It's like these weird situations where you're like, I don't even know what to do. Like, this is so weird that I don't even know.
You just let people do like, okay,
yeah, you
touch
let
my
them
head.
like touch your head or whatever. Yeah, and it's
like you don't know what to say.
Yeah, and it's not till like we're older, and I think it also goes down to also like how we're raised, right? Like we are raised to have respect for other people, and we also are raised, I don't know about y'all, but like we're raised to, in a lot of cultures, like not say anything. People make you uncomfortable, and you kind of just do what you can do in your immediate control and keep it pushing. So if somebody asks you, can they touch your hair, and they're unassuming and you don't think it's malicious, you're like, yeah, I guess, you know? But I think the older we get to, the more we realize that this is not normal, one. And two, like, I'm going to say no to you because it's my body and what you're asking me is weird, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that is a big part of, like, growing up in an African household too, is like learning to kind of take autonomy of ourselves and our bodies, and also telling other people, like, no, like, that's weird. Like, just saying no, you know? And, like, just being like,
Yeah.
like, saying the truth, and, like, having a voice and being vocal about things that we think are weird. But, you know.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I would say, like, in the past maybe 8 years or so is when I just started to be like, I've had enough. And people that know me before, you could just say whatever and I'd be like, oh, you're dumb or whatever, like, pass it off. But now I'm just like, do you have time? Because I'd like to discuss what you just said.
Yeah.
And it's also, I say things in a condescending way, obviously.
It's okay, you know. From being people who, like, were raised to not say anything to now we can speak. Like, how do you expect us to do? You know.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier that you're from Rwanda, same country as Ian.
Yes.
And we had spoken with him a while ago, and we were talking about, you know, when people hear Rwanda, right? It's like there are two things that come to mind, right? Like what happened in 1994,
Right.
and what Hollywood did with that, and then also, you know, the fact that Rwanda has developed so much and recovered and done really well for itself since then, right? And so I wonder, just like being somebody who had left Rwanda at a young age and gone to so many other countries and then ended up being finally here, like, how do you view your home country, and, like, what are your kind of thoughts? I smile when I say that because I think that there's also, like, a sense of pride that comes with that, and being from a specific place that you can relate to other people from, and that you can connect on, like, we are all from this place.
Right.
So what are your kind of feelings toward the country, and what are also things that you want people to know about Rwanda that you think they might not know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, to be quite honest, it's been like a learning journey. So we left when I was 2. My younger sister was 9, and like my mom taught us the language, so we always spoke the language at home, so we could communicate with people that came around, other kids that came around. So we were able to, like, maintain conversations and maintain a culture, but it was a culture that was, like, you know, in a giant bubble that once you walked out of it, everything else was different. So it's like, that was interesting. I go all my years. We don't go back. I didn't go back for the first time until 2018. Wow. So, I mean, I go there now. I'm 26 years old. I don't know anywhere. I don't know anything other than my aunt that I'm living with. And the fact that I was just like, oh, when we lived in Zambia, my best friend, she was getting married. So she was like, are you going to come? And I was like, after all these years, of course. So then I was like, I can't fly into Africa for the first time and not at least go check out what's happening here. Yeah. And so that was fascinating. To me, it's like, I would love to be like, oh, this and that. I'm like, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
But it was really cool for me just to see the different things. But I was by myself, and my mom was so nervous. She flew in like the next week. And I was like, I think you just wanted a free trip out of this. But then did we go 2013?
Yeah,
2003? 2022. Okay. So 2022, I was like, guys, why don't we all just go together for the first time? So my mom and my sisters and I all went, and that was something else, because then it's just like, now I'm an adult, but I also have my family with me, so I'm not like super reserved. And my older sister, who has friends there and stuff, she's like, we're going here and here. And I was like, that's cool, because last time I was just like, Aunt, where do I go? Because I'm only here for like a total of 5 days, and they were split between 2 weeks. But I mean, I would say like Rwanda is fantastic. It's everything that they sell it to be, at least for me. That's someone that's like learning about it and getting to experience it the first couple of times. So it's been great. And I always talk to him, and he's like, oh, right there. And I'm all, no, I don't know what that means.
I'm supposed to know what this is.
I grew up there, so I know the places.
Yeah, I know you grew up there. We know you know the places.
Yes, but I'm a town boy, you know. I mean, it's just like, we are from the same country at least. Like, if she said like I was there, if I said like, oh, you are at Green Corner. Green Corner is a famous bar. Shout out to people from Green Corner. And it's like, oh, I was at Green Corner. It's like, oh, did you check out the boutique down? Because I know that. I mean, I expect.
You expected
I mean,
too much.
being from being from the same country, sometimes you have like too much of expectation from people, and like every time when we're talking, it doesn't even cross in my mind that she has never been there. So I'm not talking to my
to yourself.
Speaks the language with you, or what? Like what makes you feel like that?
I mean, because we speak the same language, and she's okay. She speak she our local language. She's speaking Rwanda's not like somebody who didn't grow up in the country. She's really, like, the accent is very perfect. So like in my mind, in my mind, I only think like, oh, so if I know something, I expect her to know it too. I mean,
Like in mentioning that you like growing up here and then him growing up in Rwanda, he has a certain expectation on you. Like, how have you been navigating that? Like, how have you been able to deal with that?
Well,
Not just with him though, with everybody.
yeah.
Tell us about him.
I mean, you skip him.
Yeah.
But well, it's funny because like the first time I met him, I was like, "Who's this guy?" And then the next time I met him, I was yelling at him. And then the next time we're just like, "Oh, we're friends now, right?" So it's sometimes he'll say things, and I'm like, "Ian, no, we're not doing that." But for the majority of the things, is he's open to hearing why it is that I think the way that I think, which then allows me to be like, okay, and then why did you say what you say, But then, there is an expectation that like falls, because my mom, like when we came here, it was just her. So everyone's like, oh, it's 3 girls with a mom, and I'm all, yes, and so like people expect me to act a certain way, and they can sometimes be a little too forward. But to me, it's like, I totally understand, and I understand where you're coming from, but the same understanding I'm putting on you, I'm expecting back. And if you challenge that and you're refusing to understand what I'm saying, that's on you. That has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And I will walk away.
And do you feel like you're saying, like 3 girls and a mom, right? Like I also get with my mom, so I think that there are some just African overall, like expectations or stereotypes that people have when they hear that. And so do you think that like you, like where do you find yourself in, or where do you feel like you fall into some of these like expectations that people place on you, 1, and 2, like how do you find yourself navigating that? Like I think that sometimes growing up here, it can be frustrating to fall in line or to fully agree with some of our cultural norms. And like an example for us is like sending money back home, right? Like I'll send money back home. It's not a problem.
Right.
But it can be that every time somebody needs something, I'm the only one you're calling. Like, and also like you can't also be sitting home and telling me there are no jobs in Ghana, so you can't work. So that I should send you money. Like if you knew how hard it was here, you wouldn't understand, So how do you kind of navigate that, like those cultural norms that maybe you hadn't grown up with in particular, but now, especially as an adult, they might even be expected of you to follow those cultural norms because you're Rwandan and you're an adult.
Yeah. Luckily, we had a mom that was very much like, I trust you. Like, she gave us authority to sort of own our own space. Granted, she's still an African mom, so there's like, you can only push it so far. But so that kind of went like that into my adulthood, where it's just I've found myself being like, I can accept the norm and I can, agree with it. And there are like certain things where I'm just like, people will be like, but why do you still live at home with your mom? And I'm like, well, that's what we do. And then, sometimes people are just like, how can you be that old and you're not married? And I'm like, because I prioritize education. My mom wanted me to prioritize education. And when I graduated at 21, I'm not going to be anyone's wife. No, I'm a hot ass mess. I mean, fast forward to today, still. A little bit,
Come on, man.
But it's just like there's certain things where I can totally understand, and out of respect for my mom, I do abide by. But then there's some where it's just like there's a certain part of you that can honor your culture, honor your heritage, honor the cultural norms. and then, understand that they are going to carry out through the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's some where you have to be, when you get to a part where in your life you're like, I'm an adult, and no, I don't mean when you're 18, you can take that and say, I sort of have charge of my life now, and so I can separate myself from this specific thing, but then carry all these other things with you. So that's what I would say about that.
That's solid. I agree, girl. I agree. Yeah.
So it's more like as you went on, as like you grow up, your maturity, you were able to discern like which, culture you're gonna uphold and other that you're gonna disregard.
Exactly. And I would say like folks that have known me when I was like 17 to when I was 25 to when I'm 32 now, it's like they've seen quite a difference. And I also recognize it in myself. So, and it's just like, hey, we can still agree on certain things, but if you're comfortable moving forward with me being this way, let's go ahead. But if not, like, I can't just, I pick up the phone and be like, oh yeah, why aren't you still married? Well, there you go.
Yeah.
'Tis life. What's your next question? How are you?
It's like, hey, auntie, yeah. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye. It was nice speaking to you.
Yeah, that's how she is. That's one of the reasons that like we like each other, but we fight a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time I met her, I was going to watch a football game at their place.
Mm-hmm.
And because she was a Kansas Chief, are you a Kansas Chief fan, right?
I think that time I was, yeah.
It was
That Chiefs fan, yeah.
I was like, I'm like, I don't know anything about football. I'm from Africa. Football is soccer for us. So I'm like, okay, because you are Kansas City Chiefs, I'm going to be 49ers. And ever since we don't agree on anything, but it's kind of like for because in our culture, like she's saying, like ladies, they have a certain way to behave, and it's not that she doesn't behave like a lady. It's just like she just gives you another side of like a woman lady. How it's not like follow, but you have your own, values that you want people to know. Like,
Can I pause you?
Mhm.
Because you're saying a Rwandan lady, and I'm wondering, like since Josie, you're from Congo, and like obviously I grew up in a Ghanaian household. What is a Rwandan lady? Because I feel like the protocols that African countries have for women in general usually fall in line with one another. There's this kind of like ideal African woman. She's docile. She doesn't talk too much. She doesn't speak when she's not spoken to. She, tends the house. Like all these things, right? That like, oh, an African woman, a good African woman is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, is that those kind of values that you're referring to when you talk
it's not. No. It's not. They're not values. It's like what we think. Like as African men or African culture, like how they want a woman to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's like how we saw our moms or our aunties or like growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's culture. It's not something that's gonna change like right away. But it's like, can somebody be able to show another side of like being a Rwandan lady and being different? I think I think that's JJ. We fight a lot, but she teaches me a lot.
Yeah.
Because as somebody who just came in the U.S. from Rwanda, I had this closed, mindset. So I needed somebody to just open that box. It's like, and we can't. There is agreeing with something and disagreeing. It's not like it's not always good, but at least it opens another box, and then you go or another way of looking into things.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like both of you, it's more like you complement each other. Somewhat in the way that like him, he was more like close-minded when he came here, and you, because you grew up here, like you were more like open-minded in a way, like you were more open to a lot of ideas and how a woman should look and everything. So like, do you think he complimented you in a way that like you kind of know now how people think back home? Like,
yeah, I think he more like reinforces the fact that it's totally fine to be who the hell I am. It's like he gets it. He's like, you're a little out there sometimes, generally speaking. you'll get it. So I'm like, cool.
Thank you. I'm like, I'm glad you were his exposure because when he met the rest of us,
Yeah.
Come on,
he was already ready because he knew. Because in the office, we all fight with him because you have to. Yeah,
Because what else?
Yeah, you have to fight with him. So I'm glad that he already had exposure to what that looks like because now he works with a bunch of outspoken African women who, when he says left, we say right. And he just has to deal with it, So big ups to you for for being the one to break the shell. Yeah.
So like now when it comes to like relationship, marriage and everything, since like, African men, just like you mentioned, are more like, they have a specific way of seeing like a woman otherwise. So now like you are here. Like what would be like your criteria in terms of like, mating with someone, being with someone, like what you think would be a perfect match for you now that you have this mindset?
So I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. I just have not had much dating experience. Mostly because my mom scared the hell out of me when I was younger. So I was like, I'm going to push it. Now I'm just like, I mean,
Or they eat anybody.
but I do find that some of the like people that have expressed interest, they're either interested in one part of me or over another part of me. And it's just like, hey, listen, I am going to have a conversation with you. I don't mind speaking my mind in front of your friends, in front of, if it's parents, I'll try and hold back. I know how to like, take a step back and be respectful to your elders, that teaching. But it's like, if your friend says something and I look at you and you're like, I'm going to be like, okay, sir, this is what we were saying. And that's not how you say it.
Right.
And I've also learned that
what is it? Just say it.
I remember, like, I just feel like there is a little bit of a language barrier with the people that I interact with. And so sometimes when I look back, I'm like, okay, I maybe misunderstood what you said because there was one guy, I've seen him twice. And then he's like, I love you. And I said, you're insane. You don't know anything about me.
He said, please.
And I always think back to that. And I'm like, I wonder what he meant, because he was newer here. But to me, all I heard was, I love you. Because he had to ask me to step out. We were like with a group of people.
Oh, yeah.
We were with a group of people. And he's like,
can't do that.
to step out. And I was like, sure. We step outside. And then he just starts this confession thing. And I'm all,
Did he speak Rwanda too or no?
no. He was from another country.
Oh, yeah. It's okay. We don't doubt him.
Yeah. But that's very close to ours. So I was just like, this is confusing. I'm confused.
Sure.
And like over time, like just different guys that I've met, because I'm more like, let's get to know each other, and I want you to like know who I am, just so you can get a good understanding of like what you're getting, rather than like us just being like, so we want kids, so we want to like have a good job, so we want to like own a home, we want to eat, like all these things. Yeah, that's true. But if I can't trust you, because you aren't entirely the same person all the time, that like trust for me is just like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
When people talk about loyalty, I'm like, but loyal to what? And why would this job? And so I think, and it's probably like an insane answer, but what am I looking for in someone that would be my partner is why. Like, why this? Why? Like, you can tell me everything that you want, but why? And if it doesn't make sense for me, it doesn't make sense. And I think also people just sometimes are like, oh, I've heard, she's intimidating. She thinks she's better than everyone. And I'm like, what? What? Tell me, why? Why do you feel like that?
Like,
or what is it?
We feel it. We feel it. What intimidating? You is intimidating. We feel it.
Yeah, right. That's your problem. That's you. It is what it is. Okay. And that language barrier thing is so real. Like, I went to an African grocery store with my husband, but he was outside getting food at a food truck. And an African guy, I'm not going to say where from, but with my ring on my finger. He walks up to me and he goes, "Are you single? Are you looking for a husband?" And I was like,
You're like, is that how to say hi?
"Yeah." He's like,
You said the same, right?
"No." And I was like, "No." I'm single. He's like, "Are you single?" And then my husband comes in, and then the guy knows my husband.
I mean, do you?
No.
The guy knows.
So that was my husband. And he's like, "Hi," and then he's like, "That's your wife?" And he didn't even say that to him. He's like, "It's your wife."
That's embarrassing.
but yeah, so it's real. It's tough out here. Like, let's give all the people who are not English language proficient a break.
Right.
If you're dating somebody who's not English language proficient, please give them a break.
Please do. Be nice.
Hey, I mean,
Oh,
I mean, like right now I cannot even talk because my language barrier. But you know,
whenever you heard him before, it's the language barrier. So it's just,
it's language barrier. Like they are banning me out here, but it's language barrier. Yeah, that's
You know what I'll say? When I was in Rwanda, like my aunt, this is towards the end of the trip,
yeah.
and they're just having a conversation, and they go, honestly, when everybody else is speaking English, we get it. But when JJ starts to speak, it's just rapid fire, and all you hear is wah 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 wah.
JJ, stop. We might be the same person because my mother, my mom, my raised, yes, she'll be like, don't say something to her, and she'll be like, "What?" She'll be like, "All I heard was."
That's exactly why we're here. That's exactly why we're here. She's talking.
My husband didn't speak English when we first met. So again, be nice to people. Be nice English because you never know, and don't dodge them because they don't speak English because you never know.
But if they tell you they love you at first meeting,
Just
run.
clarify. Google Translate.
Oh yeah, we didn't have back then.
No. Oh, true. Yeah. But my husband didn't speak English when we first met. So like I learned French because of him. He learned English with me, and he speaks English like I speak English. So like
Oh, nice.
I speak English very fast, obviously. So sometimes when he's speaking English, he's also like speaking fast. So if me and him are together, we're talking to my mom's just like, "Just stop this. Like, wait, just stop and slow down. Everybody take a breath and breathe because it's too much, So yeah, but I wanted to ask you two too, like being in a room and in a space, and also being friends with and knowing two very non-traditional African women who don't necessarily fit into the mold of what an African woman is. Like, how does interacting with women like us shape your perspectives and maybe like change your perspectives on like maybe ideas that you might have had or things that you didn't even know you had in the back of your head until you're now around people that defy those ideas?
I mean, me, like, personally, because my wife, she's African. Of course. She came here when she was.
Not of course. What do you know? Not of course.
You don't know?
Yeah.
She's like Ethiopian. She came here when she was 8 years old. So, like, of course, she grew up here, just like you guys. So she kind of, speak the same way you guys speak and all that stuff. But like when I came here, of course, I was dating, like I started dating someone who was American, like he was really native. I think there was also like that language barrier because every time I'll speak, like she'll always like try to get near, like, "What are you saying?" Like, stuff like that. And also, I think the hardest part for me is like when my parents came to visit here, she was very like touchy, like, but in our culture,
Oh yeah.
parents they don't really like
They don't want
you
to.
don't want to show that affection, right? So she would try like to cuddle, like and so I would try to like push her, like get away. So in that sense, like it was kind of hard,
Yeah. It makes sense.
I mean, for me, it is way different. I didn't growing up, there was no female in our household. I don't have a sister. I don't have a mom. My mom died when I was young. So it was kind like, that's why always when I meet a woman, I just go to the opposite of what she's saying. Because I just...
What?
Yes, because I want to get her opinion. I want, like, I'm going to be this raw African man, and then I will say things how I think. It's not that exactly that's how I am, but I just want to get the best version of, like, that particular person because I never, like, that's, if you ask even my coworker, the one that I sit with, I always tell her, like, I always want to know how women think. Because I never had that. It's like I had my dad and my brothers, and it was like, oh, it's this, it's that. There was not like if you go to school and somebody beat you up, there is no like, oh, he beat you up, so go get him next time. So that's how it was. So it wasn't nothing. It's like this talk about it, why and whatever. And I think like that's a mom's side that I didn't have to see. But and like as when it comes to dating or whatever, like having a relationship with female, I always want to be hard so that you tell me exactly like how I should appropriately, address you, or like, how I should talk to you. Because it's, for me, it's still even today, it's still a learning, a learning experience. So for me, I am the person, I'm not a good example of talking about like female or whatever, because I'm still learning. I cannot exactly know where like I'm gonna put somebody. But as an African man, as how I saw my aunties, my friends, or my neighbors back home, I wouldn't like my partner to be like that, personally.
Yeah.
So that's why I always want another side. Like, just tell me.
Yeah.
Just tell me so that I can know. And instead of me, because like, even though I didn't have a female in my life, but I saw people around, and it was I was in Rwanda. It was normal. So if I do it, I don't think like it's a it's a mistake until you tell me it's wrong. So I always want to learn about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I also think I remember now this one thing. When I started dating here, like this American girl, I usually had the intention to pay everything, But then afterwards, she was like, why are you paying everything? Like, are you trying to prove that, you're more of a man and all that? So, I was kind of confused, why she would say that. So for her,
I'll leave my wallet at home.
so like for her, it looks like me paying a lot. It's just like, I'm trying to be like over masculine or something like that. So for her, she wanted to also contribute, so, like, make sure she also has a place, like she can also contribute financially, and also, because she felt like if I contribute financially, that means I have
Expectations.
and all that.
Have a say. Like, I think that's something too that, especially for African men, like you're saying, like that's so normal, right? When you first come here and you're dating, you want to pay. Like, you don't even expect, you don't even look at a woman to do something like that. When I was dating my husband, it was the same way. That he paid for everything, and he would like schedule things out too, and be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna take you here on this day and do this and this and this and blah blah blah," so that he could plan for it too, So he always did everything, and it wasn't until I was talking to my mom, and she was like, "You can pay for stuff," like she was like, "It's okay for you to pay for stuff." And I was like, "Really?" Like, but my mom was telling me the same thing of like, you don't want to also do that because you also don't want to be like relying on a man all the time, So like you're saying, like when you also pay, when you contribute, it also can give somebody space to respect you and know that, like if things come down to it, you will be able to pull your own weight, or you can take care of things on your own, So I think that like that mindset, I mean, if you're paying, I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to be like, I'm not going to tell you like, oh no, don't pay, I got it. Like, no, if you're paying, I'm going to sit still and let you pay.
With this economy, like, you should pay. This economy, you should pay.
In this economy, there's inflation. Like, listen, I'm married, but sometimes I'm still like,
That's funny.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you raised too, and I think it's interesting to hear it from the side of a man, and also just like, did you do that just because like it was normal, like that's just what you were supposed to do, or like
it was just normal to me because my dad always paid for everything. I never really see my mom pull out a wallet to pay something. So it's like it's been embedded in my head. Like, a man's supposed to do that. When you go on dates, wherever you go, you're the one that's supposed to spend money. So it was just the way we were raised,
Most of the time we don't even think about it. It's just like we have seen all our lives, so it's not, we don't think even. It's like we think that's how it's supposed to be. That's it.
Yeah, you just do.
You know what?
And you have, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say I'm the opposite of that. Earlier when I said, oh, I'm forward, it's mostly comes from the fact that I haven't really dated. So I've always just taken care of my own stuff. So sometimes I have gone out with people, we're a group of folks, and then like the card, and I just hand over my card, and then everyone just kind of gets a little uncomfortable, and I'm all I'm looking at my older sister. I'm like, did I do it again? No. So I think it's it can go both ways, and I think the felt disrespect can both be like felt back from both sides. So yeah, I find it interesting.
Do you think that like because you grew up here and you grew up kind of it's kind of like cross-cultural, right? Like you're kind of like straddling like two different identities because you are Rwandan, like to your core, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were raised in a Rwandan household. You were raised speaking the language, and even if you weren't raised speaking the language, you were still raised in a household like your mother is from Rwanda. That's
right.
It's a part of your identity, you know. And then you're also growing up in an American society that says certain things, right? And so, do you think that shapes like how you view men in general and like maybe men's places in like relationships? And do you also think that like it shapes your view or disregard for gender roles? If you have thoughts on gender roles?
Yes. So when it comes to gender roles, I've been in households where like it's so opposite of what I'm used to seeing in African households. I'm like, that's dope. And then sometimes like I've been to parties. And I remember a specific party where I was so shocked. I was like, what is going on? We went as a group of friends, and it was like a family type of, it was like a mom and dad that went through a party. And then we walk in, and we're sort of like that core group of like 20s and 30s. We walk in, and all the men are sitting there. And I'm like, where are your wives? We walk further into the house. They were all sitting in a corridor. And I was like, I'm sorry, what's going on? And I was like, I cannot, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, so I'll go sit in the kitchen where no one else is, like, but there's chairs. But I was like, this is kind of weird. And so when it comes to my perspective on that, it's, yes, I do straddle that sort of, what do I do? What's appropriate here? What's appropriate there? And sometimes you just have to, I just have to switch.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just have to step outside. We're just gonna stand outside. And I think I see that more and more, where in specific parties where the norms are a little bit pushing it, you'll find the younger or more millennial groups, we're just choosing to stand outside because then we don't have to abide by, like, no one has to sit over here or do this. We'll just go stand outside and we'll chit chat. And then that's like kind of changing the culture for us within that space.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think that's like, it's so important to know how to also make our own way in the spaces that have been a certain way for so long, And I think that the gender roles conversation, especially growing up here, is so interesting because America does kind of have its own like weird gender roles.
Yeah.
And then I think like adding African gender roles to that in America, it's like a whole nother thing.
What are we doing?
And like, I got married when I was young, and so my mom sometimes would be like, oh, like, what does your husband think about this? Or did you ask your husband? And I'm like, I don't have to ask my husband anything. Like, that's weird, you know? But for her, it's like, that was normal. Like, you do, like going on trips. Like I went on a girls trip last month. My mom was like, oh, like your husband's okay with that? And I was like, yeah, is he not going to be okay with that? Like, I don't get it,
Yeah.
And so I think that like straddling that line of like, again, growing up in a certain way and knowing that that's who you are, but also being raised in a certain way,
right,
in a certain culture and community is also like.
And also sometimes like for me here, you're kind of raised by society as well. Yeah. So you're getting 3 messages, and then you are trying to figure out, how do I come out of this, and how do I maintain this like, Rwandan thing that's in me, like that's my soil, like it's so interesting.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad actually that you mentioned that. How do you maintain the random thing in you? So like, how would you think later on when you have kids? How would you teach them like your culture, and at the same time teach them how to, develop their own identity?
Yeah, I would say, if I was to find myself in that situation, I definitely want to do what my mom did, where it's just like, hey, this is who you are. Like, we could go outside and she'll speak to us in whatever language with everybody else, with whoever we are with outside. But in the house, we had to speak Kinyarwanda. She always spoke to us in Kinyarwanda. If we decided to respond in a different language, she would still respond back in Kinyarwanda. So then it's like, when I'm speaking with her, I'll speak to her in Kinyarwanda, but then when my sisters and I are talking, we always speak in English. Yeah. But then I can't remember the term, but it is the this thing where if you're bilingual, you'll say a word, but then you say it like in the accent of something else in the other language. So I'm going to drive. Driving is not a Kinyarwanda word. Yeah. But then, like, so I've started to notice that the longer and longer that we are here, I am starting to use that that kind of language. So I'm like, well, now how are they going to know Kinyarwanda? But I don't have to do it all by myself. You know, I have a community around me, and so if we need to just like make sure we're taking enough trips back home, knowing your family, knowing other Rwandans, knowing this is what Rwandan culture is, and this is like what we value. This is what another thing is, like, I love my traditional dance. When I was younger, my mom, there was like a lady that used to be a professional dancer, so we used to always hang out with her. So my sisters and I all learned that dance. And the same thing with the language, with the dancing. Everyone's like, are you sure you didn't grow up there? And I'm like, yeah. So there are different things and outside of maybe language that you can instill in your kids to have that, you know, that's the core. But then also the world is big.
Yeah.
Learn, look around, and be interested, and like let your mind like look outwards.
Yeah, definitely.
So, let me just put you out here.
Oh.
Yeah, but like you like to travel, and I mean, even you are sitting at your house or you're like in the living room, like you are thinking like, where is my next spot? Where is my next destination? Like what brought that love, that, you know, that drive of like I want to travel? Like, where do you get it from?
I think maybe if I really had to like look within and really, you know, sink inwards, I would say the way we grew up. We moved around a lot. And then we got to a spot where everything stopped. And then it was like a lull for a good long amount of time. And then my younger sister and I, like when drones really started coming out, Rwanda did the Visit Rwanda, like their first campaign was like, I was looking at it, I'm like, is that what it looks like? I had a picture in my head, but it's not what it looked like. And then I was like, oh my God, I want to go. So then that's when we decided that we were going to go. And then as I started like kind of getting older and I'm just thinking like watching movies. I like to watch foreign films, and it's just like sometimes I'll watch something and I'm like, the air there just looks different. It's like the air through the TV looks different. I'm like, fat smells different too because you can smell it. And so my best friend, she was getting married and we were going to do her bachelorette party in Mexico, and then COVID happened. So then we didn't go. But then I had this ticket and I go, I'm going to go by myself. So I went and everybody was like, you're going by yourself. This is when restrictions are now coming off. So I go by myself and I'm like, well, that was cool. I'm good. And then I got back home and I was like, and then, you know, maybe a year later, I was like, well, where else can I go? So then I decided to go to Portugal. And now I'm just like, I have a bug. I've been bit by the bug and I just want to go see. And, you know, should marriage come around and then you're now having to consider other people, the best time to travel is now. So that's why I'm doing it aggressively.
Yeah, as you should. You really should.
That's man. Don't support it.
Why? Why shouldn't she travel? I'm traveling as well. I love to travel. I'm the same way as you.
Do you like it too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Aren't you the people mom was always giving me a hard time about the fact that I'm always gone?
I thought it was because of your husband, but
look at this man.
You see we're making progress. You know, we can have nice things. We can never have nice things.
I mean, like you were saying, like your mom has to. Your mom told you, like, did you talk to this about with your husband, with the, like, I mean,
Because you have to talk to him about it and maybe invite him if he wants to go. But like,
I was just kidding.
you know, I know, you know.
Yeah. So JJ, like being around in Colorado, I mean, for me, I came 2018, like in December, but you have been here like 15 years before me. So like, and we are a very tiny country where we're from, and nobody knew about Rwanda at the time. Like, so what is it that you did, or like you said, which stand out, made you Rwandan, made you like feel like I'm Rwandan in America?
Well, I don't know if I have thought, well, what has made me think I'm a Rwandan in America?
Mm-hmm.
I think the environment and the spaces that I've been in, I'm always typically like one of, you know, like there's rarely, outside of like Rwandan parties, Rwandan groups of people, Rwandan like associations, things like that. When we first came here, like I mentioned, there was only 3 families. And so I always understood that I was Rwandan and I was in America. And so when people ask me, oh, and are you from Colorado? And I'm like, my family's originally from Rwanda, but yes, I've lived here for the majority of my life. I don't know why. It's like instinctual. It comes out of me. Like, it's just, I have always understood it to be the truth, and I need everyone else to understand that.
It's like, it's needing them to know that this is your actual identity. Like, I'm not a Coloradoan. I mean, I am, but like before that, I am something else.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm the same way. Like, I was born in America, but I've always known that my parents are from Ghana, that we are Ghanaians. Like, it's always been instilled in me, you know?
Yeah.
So people ask me, I'll be like, oh, like, my family's from Ghana, but I was born here. I used to be like, I'm Ghanaian, but some people would always give me a hard time about it. So I had to, you know,
edit the script.
Yeah, edit the script a little bit. So now I've adjusted it to fit everybody, so nobody asks me questions. But yeah, like, I think it's just that, like, needing people to know that, like, that is your identity, that's your core. That's what you were, like, you are built on the fact that this is who you are. You know?
Okay. Yeah. And I think there was one time I was in an Uber and the guy was like, oh, are you from Colorado? And I'm like, yes, but originally from Rwanda. And he was like, well, I don't think he was from Colorado Springs. He was like, well, I don't think a lot of people from Colorado would appreciate you calling yourself Coloradoan. And I was like, first of all,
are you crazy?
Don't even talk to me. Why are you even talking to me? And the rest of the ride, I was just like, I'm so annoyed. But
what does that even mean?
What does that mean?
To say?
Yeah, he had a lot of issues. I figured that out in like the first 3 minutes, and I was like, and now we're gonna scroll on the phone for the rest of the ride. It's like, it was just so annoying. Like, I do have moments like that where it's just like, you know what? I am Rwandan in Colorado, and I should let everyone know that.
Because they need to know.
Because you need to know.
Yeah, they need to know. You have to tell them, and you're doing the right thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
I stand by it, girl.
Really? I mean, it's like, you know, you have to, but it doesn't mean that you have to be like we live in a community, or we live like I don't know how I can call it, but this you gotta live with everybody. Don't you think sometimes, like let's say for you as a Congolese or as a Ghanaian, when you talk about where you're from that much, people think like you are trying to feel like you're superior or something, you know?
No.
They say like in African way, like when somebody say like I'm from Ghana, you like that sense of pride. When he said it 3 times, 4 times, they're like, oh, we heard you. Was it like, you know, that kind of like...
Ian, you're just always trying to be flat on his wrist everywhere he goes.
Don't talk
Bird.
But
Not gonna lie though, this East African thing, it's a bug, I tell you. It's like every time I see these, I'm like, so you're from somewhere in East Africa?
Oh yeah, like, so, for real, like, or you know what, East African.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, but do you feel like that at all? That people take you to feel like you're trying to separate yourself, or maybe like set yourself aside when you do use that part of your identity or mention it?
Not really. And honestly, if they did, I don't really care.
Yeah. Again, like there's so many things that are them problems and not us problems. You know, like it's a you problem. It's not me.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so like I mean I get it. And maybe it's just like the people that I'm talking to. I spend a lot of time at home ever since COVID started. I don't really get to have these conversations with like different types of people. So I'm like, this is exciting. Because I'm just doing my job, and then I'm talking to my family, and then hanging out with the Rwandans or my friends from like old jobs. And then I'm going home. And so I don't really get too much interaction. So maybe that's why I can't speak too much to it is I've just been separated for it for a few years now. So maybe if I was in a space and someone said, you know, I'm Rwandan, I'm like, okay.
And well, do that. I think I agree, right? Like if somebody's constantly repeating it over and over again, you know, then that can make you feel like, what are you trying to say? Like what's the point of this? You know, but I feel like at a point you have to identify it as a part of it's a part of who you are. And I think that like not mentioning those things is more so like dismissing that part of your identity. Like, and it's important. Like your identity is what grounds you, you know, and what links you to your values and to what you believe in and to what you are passionate about. Like our identities shape all of those things. So omitting that in an introduction seems small. Actually is a big thing. You're establishing yourself in like who you are. It's like anybody who meets you, you're like, yeah, I'm a proud Rwandan. You know, like it's always like, you know, it's always out there that you're a proud Rwandan. You're not just Rwandan, you're a proud Rwandan, and you can never there are certain things that you can never do because you're a proud Rwandan, you know? So yeah.
Well. Look at that. How the turntables.
I mean, like, how is she that? But you like that was my question to her. Like, okay, I get it.
I'm just putting it out there, you know.
Yeah. But I am though.
Yeah, we know. Everybody knows. Yeah. So I think like it's important to do. So I think that not that you need validation from anybody, but I think that you should keep doing that because I think it's essential to the core of who you are.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
So as part of like growing up, like, you know, as immigrant, and now you are like an American citizen, and now when you travel like an American citizen, and is it like once you get, let's say when you're in Portugal, how damn, you know, the shift, because it's like right here in America you feel like I'm Rwandan in America, and now you're traveling as an American citizen to another country. Like how do you know how that juggle in your mind, how the shift, how do you do it? Like,
you know what I find interesting,
because like before you respond, like people have weird assumption when it comes to Americans, depending on what we watch in the movies, whatever. So like, and now you are traveling like an American, but to the core, you know that you're from Rwanda. Like how, you know?
Yeah. That is interesting. When I think about it, like when I went, it's like this Rwandan in the U.S. sort of like lifted. Now that I think about it, like I just didn't have to think about this weird thing, because the first time I land there, I'm like lost. I need to go find my bag, and then I'm standing there trying to find where we catch the Ubers, and this lady starts like, she comes up to me. Oh no, I was sitting at the Starbucks. She comes up to me and she's like asking for the Wi-Fi, and she just like starts going in Portuguese, and I go, I was like, Wi-Fi, and she goes, Americana, and she just walked away, and I'm like.
I know how people feel American. That's why I asked.
But it's interesting, mostly because the history of Portugal, they have a large community of Black folks there. So to them, they don't see me as anything other than a possible Portuguese. And so, like, I didn't have to be like, oh. And so when we did go sit down to dinners, and they'll be like, oh, from America? And I'm like, yes, from Rwanda. I'm Rwandan American. So never mind, I'm lying. I lied.
Yeah, I've been Native American.
Yes. I just lied because I remember when I went this time with my sister, the guy, like the manager at the restaurant, was like, oh, you're America? From where? And I was like, oh, from Colorado, but we're Rwandan. And he goes, ah. And I was like, okay. I did have to add that little, that little asterisk. Never mind. It is. Maybe I do it all the time.
Be there, you know. Like even two examples for even for me. Like I was in Aruba with my friends last month, and like two of them ordered double cheeseburgers at this restaurant, right? And we got to the cashier. We were like, okay, we have 2 double cheeseburgers. And the cashier was like, we don't do that. and they had already agreed to do it, right?
Right.
And the person who agreed to do it came quickly and in papiamento, but we could understand. She was like, they're Americans. So she allowed it, you know, because we're American.
Yeah.
And then even like me and my friends, because they were all well, one of them's Ghanaian, and then the other ones were Nigerian, and so we were all kind of like, "Are you American?" Like, what is
What
this?
are
You know? And then like another time we were in France, and I was with my husband, and you know he speaks French, and so he was speaking French, blah blah blah. The person was like, "Oh, like," but they could tell that I was struggling because I could understand French but not speak perfectly. And so they're like, "Where are you guys from?" We're like, "Oh, from the U.S." And then they were like, "Oh, you're Americans." And then my husband was like,
twitching.
When somebody say like you are Malaysian, there's something is coming.
There's a glitch face that he makes where he like closes one eye, like there are some things. So he was like, and then he was like, wow. And then he was like he explained like he was Central African, but living in the U.S. And then it's cool. I think like the other thing that it does, right, is that like it opens you up, because when he said he was Central African, and when I was like, oh, like I'm Ghanaian American, then he was like, oh, Accra. And then he was like, oh, Bongi. Like he knew the capital of like my husband's country, and like they got to talking about that and stuff like that. So I think also like just closing that part of your identity, because I think when you're American, people already have all of their preconceived ideas.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, some of them might be true. Like that's fine.
Yeah.
But then when you add, you know, that hyphen before, and you have the other part of your identity that makes you multifaceted, right? People can also find another level to relate to you on.
Yeah.
That opens you up to a whole different interaction than you would have if you didn't disclose that about yourself. So I think that like, yeah, it's important to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And there is a privilege definitely that comes from having that hyphenate, the second one being American. So
Yes.
it's like, you know, I am Rwandan, but I'm also American by you know, by where I live, where I'm currently like contributing in society. So it's like even though I'm like super, and in addition to the fact that I'm very, very proud of being a Rwandan, I do also take in, you know, I can't lose that acknowledgement that there are certain privileges that do come with that second part.
We're getting ready to wrap up, but I wanted to ask you just a couple more questions. One about mental health. I think mental health has kind of been a thread through a lot of the conversations that we've been having lately.
Yeah.
And how, in a lot of ways, there kind of is a lack of full understanding of mental health in a lot of African households. And then also, in having conversations with Ian and talking about Rwanda and kind of this like collective trauma, right, that Rwanda has experienced, this like shared trauma across Rwandans in general,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily always having spaces to process or even like have the wherewithal to do the mental health work that needs to be done after such a huge collective trauma.
Right.
I wanted to kind of ask you what that looks like for you in your life and in your experiences.
Yeah. I would say growing up, there was very much just, you know, let's be quiet about it.
Yeah.
If you're feeling a certain way, you can talk about it. Like my household was pretty open.
Mm-hmm.
But there's certain things where like you just kind of are maybe afraid to ask, afraid to say. And so you kind of bottle it in. And I think that maybe that's what my quietness and when I was younger was. And then it got to a point where it just exploded out of me. And then now I'm like, but when it comes to mental health, like for me, it's just like I'm starting to understand more and more like what my body's telling me. Because before I used to be like, oh, I'm a crier, but everyone knows that. Like ever since I was a child, I cry. When we first used to move to places, especially in school, they would ask me a question. I'd start welling up, and I'm just like, I feel like now I'm reverting to that. Like everything just kind of hurts me because I'm paying attention to the world, and it's like you're hurting, but then you look over here and they're hurting. You look over there, and it's just like it's okay to sit down with yourself and be like, this is too much. I may need some help, you know? And so I think that's been something that I'm like getting more into. But in my household, I would say maybe when I was around 24, 25 is when I was just like, I get it, but you can't say that.
Yeah.
This hurts my feelings. It's a small little comment about, oh, it looks like your little belly is getting bigger. And it's like, don't say that, you know? And it's like someone doesn't even live in our house. And I'm like, Mom, you need to say something. So the next time those comments, like I just started noticing every time I would say something she was like in the back end, in the back, like trying to fix things and just like, hey, we don't do this. And so that's helped. But I think right now I'm like overwhelmed with everything. I would say. Yeah. And I think we just need to place a little bit more in educating people that it doesn't have to be like you're going to therapy because therapy costs money. Like, but do you have someone that you can just be like, I've had enough, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. That's so important and so relevant to just like how we're navigating in life these days. And one other question that we always like to ask everybody who joins us is, and Ian has already kind of said, he's like, Rwandans don't have food. Like, he's like, they don't have like our own cultural foods. But I want to know your opinion. So what is your
you cannot bring whatever personal things that I tell you out of on the plane.
This guy.
Don't, can I say anything? Come on. No, you good.
But we like to ask everybody, what is their favorite food from their culture? So like, not just what is it, don't just tell us the name, but tell us like what actually is it and why everyone should try it.
Honestly, my cultural food is my mom's food. Is all that I know. But I would say it's pounded yam, which I think everyone knows, or
solid.
Yeah, and I love cabbage, but like the way it's made there with like it's just like kind of light. It doesn't have too much like oil in it. Love that cabbage with carrots and like I love peas. Yeah, I love specific things, but I think they're kind of geared towards the way I'm used to eating them from my mom's cooking.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Gigi, thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy to have you.
Of course. I was glad to be here. Thanks for this conversation.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Borders podcast today. Make sure to leave us a comment and let us know what you thought about today's episode. Be sure to like and subscribe and to follow us on all social media platforms. And be sure to check out our next episode wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much.